Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. I would say that we wait a few more moments for people to join, and then we start. Okay. I mean, people are still joining, but as it's already 2 minutes after 4, I think it's time to start now. So yeah, I want to welcome everybody to our today's webinar together with Delinea, in which we will talk about the cloudification of identities and how you securely bring your identities to the cloud. My name is Manuela Olhäuser, Marketing Manager at the IC Consult Group. Our presenters today are Andreas Müller, Vice President of Sales in the DACH region at Delinea, and Archie Patrick, Delinea Software Architect at IC Consult. Before we start with the presentation and the discussion, just some quick housekeeping notes from my side. You will all be on mute during the webinar, so if you have a question to our presenters or a comment to the ongoing conversation, please type in your question or comment in the chat, and I try to pick it up either directly during the presentation or we will answer them at the end of the webinar. We will record the session, so you all will receive an email with a link to this recording within the next few days. Yeah, and that's it from my side. Then I hand over to you, Archie.
All right. Good afternoon for those folks in Europe, and good morning for those in the US and North America. Today, like Manuela said, we're going to be talking about cloudification of identities and how to securely bring your identities to the cloud. The topics for today, first we'll have some definitions and a little background. We'll talk about what's happening in the cloud and why this topic is important today. We'll talk about zero trust and identity-centric security, and we'll also then have a whole discussion about privileged access management and how that's helping us address this today. Definitions. So cloudification, did we make up that word? I've run this presentation by some of our engineers and project managers, and I've gotten that comment about whether I've made up that word or not. And actually, it's not. That is an IT technology made-up term to indicate how things are being migrated to the cloud. The Free Dictionary actually has a definition for it out on the internet. And so for our topic today, the cloudification of identities is the moving, using, or managing identities and associated credentials and attributes to cloud-based resources. So that's the definition that we've come up with for what cloudification of identities is. Another thing that we want to make a distinction on is some of the questions that we're receiving about whether we're doing things for the cloud or on the cloud. And that becomes important at times when looking at technology. For the cloud are processes, software, platforms that are used to manage cloud-based resources. For example, in PAM, we have on-premise implementations that are protecting secrets on AWS, or on the cloud is when we're actually doing PAM as a service, executing on the cloud. Okay, so are enterprises engaged in cloudification? The short answer is yes, that is happening. And you may ask, am I doing that? Is my enterprise doing that? And the answer is an absolute yes, because the minute that the enterprise is engaged in using infrastructure or software or platforms or DevOps on the cloud, they have moved their identities or some of the identities to the cloud. And the reason that's an issue is because the attack surface has expanded beyond the four walls of the enterprise. We no longer have a castle surrounded by a moat. We have many resources that are needing to be protected, scattered around the world in the cloud. And so this whole perimeter protection is breaking down to where we're having to protect smaller and smaller perimeters. And so that's become an issue as more and more of the services that are available being provided are being used by the enterprise. And that is growing exponentially, as you'll see in the next few slides. Identity as a service, infrastructure as a service has grown considerably. Just between 2019 and 2020, Gartner published a study where we see this growth of 40% in the infrastructure as a service market. That means that people are truly involved in using, they're seeing the benefits of using the cloud for their infrastructure. So again, this perimeter of the enterprise is devolving to micro perimeters. And so we have to come up with a new paradigm for addressing our security for these resources. This is creating issues for the enterprise because as this scalability and flexibility and velocity for deploying infrastructure is happening, we are creating this uncertainty of how do we control these resources. Identities and credentials and permissions are just continually changing and growing, and so it's become a problem to manage access and other things as well, not just in the identities and securing, but in learning how to configure it. The expertise in the IT teams is having to grow to manage the infrastructure. So more and more expertise is needed, and so we're just having lots of challenges in managing the infrastructure. In the market for software as a service, the use of it is also growing exponentially. In this chart here by Statista that provides really good research, we see the increase in enterprises adopting the use of software on the cloud. And again, you can see that it's growing exponentially. That same Statista.com has a survey of what people think are their challenges. And one of the big ones is discovering unmanaged applications. And that's because there's this need to move quickly, to adopt quickly some of these tools. And so departments within organizations are going around the IT department or around the InfoSec to make use of those tools. And those tools are putting corporate resources at risk. And the biggest challenge that these folks also see is that we have this application sprawl. 49% of the respondents identified that. Platform as a service is also very beneficial, and a lot of us are using it, including IC Consult. And it gives us the ability to expand quickly or shut down things quickly. So it's very dynamic. The skill set within your IT department is actually reduced when you're using platform as a service, so it becomes very convenient. One of the benefits that's touted by these vendors is that you can add users very quickly. So your onboarding or your offboarding happens very quickly. Well, that also is a challenge as new users are being added. If they're being added outside of the purview of the identity management solution, you're beginning to lose control. The market for PaaS is growing very quickly. As you can see from that image there, that was from Allied Research. Also, we have challenges, and that's where we're having to address them. Again, prolific growth. All these services require elevated privilege for administration. And so a lot of organizations, because they are required to be productive and move quickly, they're overlooking their risk, and it's at the expense of security. And free accounts, as you can see there, build free on the IBM cloud is an advertisement. No credit card required to develop for free, and that's very attractive to software engineers. And again, your resources start moving to the cloud very quickly. And the question there is, who's keeping track, especially when departments outside of the purview of IT security or InfoSec or the CISO's organization, they are able to just very quickly begin to use these services. In the DevOps world, we have a similar situation. When you set up, or a provider has already set up a DevOps environment for use, there are many applications that also will require credentials and administrative users to manage these various applications. And again, the elevated access that those applications require to do their work, automated applications, is also not being protected. So engineers love this CI/CD environment, very productive. Software engineers have always been mavericks, where they love root access and don't want to give up control of their software. And so the problem is exacerbated by DevOps. And again, there's a demand for productivity at the expense of security. Here's a good perspective on what's happening in the cloud. This survey is available on a SailPoint white paper on their website. The research was done by Dimensional Research, and the question that was asked was, who has access to what? Can you accurately identify who has access to what? And for in-house critical business applications, 69% of the respondents said, yeah, that they had control over that. Not great, but it's a great start. Structured data stores, again, 53%, half of the organization knows where their data is stored and who has access to it and are able to identify that. And that's not a good number. And then it degrades from there. And so if you look at it, for software as a service, 49%, infrastructure or platform as a service, 46% have control over it. So that is a huge number. That's lots of risk. So cloud access is the second most at-risk item in the enterprises today. And so we can definitely show that the cloudification of identities is becoming a huge problem and risk. And that's probably one of the contributing factors to why we're seeing so many breaches and data theft, et cetera. So what do we do? What are we supposed to do about this? So here's some approaches. And this is where the company can begin to get control out of this. At top of the list, creating a good, solid cybersecurity program. A lot of organizations have started that. The idea is to, create one if you don't have one, implement whatever the strategy is that you've decided upon, and then validate it. There's lots of frameworks out there that people have come up with. One of those frameworks is the US government NIST has created a cybersecurity framework, and it has received a lot of adoption. And that framework or template can be overlaid over your strategies, and then you can begin to mature the program from there. The framework itself is risk management based. It's fairly easy to use. It's not a complex framework. There's lots of materials out there that can help in growing your program. And then, of course, you want to take a look at maturity models and see where you stand so that you know where to go in the future. Another approach is to have an identity-centric plan to address these issues. That's how we get rid of focusing on the perimeter. And that is agreed upon by a lot of vendors, especially the identity world vendors, that the identity is the key to beginning to gain control over the protecting the enterprise's resources. SailPoint, Okta, Ping, Delinea, and several others are in that camp of agreeing that the identity is the key. And then a zero trust strategy and architecture is where a lot of organizations are going to. Governments, US government has an executive order that tasks the NIST to define a zero trust guidance. A lot of people are using that. ISSA is also a think tank, thought leadership group, and they've addressed zero trust as well. And they talk about the evolution of, or devolution of the perimeter security model into a zero trust model. And then, of course, the minimum you should do is address the risk by using identity best practices in the things that are being moved into the cloud. So that's the minimum that should be addressed. Just as an example of how the identity is becoming centric, IDSA is an organization that several of these identity vendors are part of. They've created this consortium, and they created a framework that kind of gives you the idea of how to organize the management of the security for identities and your resources. In the heart of the framework, you can see that identity is there, and access management, privileged access management, and identity governance are all at the heart of the framework. Next, the zero trust adoption. In that same document that SailPoint has, that was the survey done by Dimensional Research. They looked at how people are doing in their implementation of a zero trust security model. And where I have the 3 green arrows there, multi-factor authentication is at the top of the list. Some of the privileged and access management companies, Delinea, has a product to help with the consolidation of multi-factor authentication across several directories, which is a great solution. Privileged access management is at the top of the list of the technologies being used to mature zero trust. Privileged access management, as you'll see on the next presentation, is grown way beyond just having a secrets vault. And so the technical capabilities of privileged access management has grown in the last 15 years considerably. And then identity governance and administration is also being used to apply zero trust principles in the management of access, limited access, etc. Role-based access as well. Today, since we're discussing Delinea and privileged access management, I've listed here some items on how PAM is being used for the cloudification of identities. And now, you'll have access to this presentation and you'll be able to look through this. So the first 3 can be managed with PAM for the cloud. And the last item here, PAM as a service, is PAM on the cloud. And that's what I've got so far, and I'll turn it over to Andreas.
Many thanks for the introduction and for the quite interesting presentation and details on that one. So I just have to figure out how to see my screen and not myself. I hope you can see my screen now, Archie.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Great. Fantastic. So many thanks on that elaboration. I just wanted to go a bit of how privileged access management can help you or can help a company to go into the cloud and secure what is in the cloud, because this is what we have in the main topic, to have a consolidated view on all the rights everywhere in the environment. And if we start from that, the typically the basic understanding that was before, so about what is an asset or what is something that might be relevant for me to take care about based on the rights, has increased, as Archie already said. So if you take this as your classically would say data center on-prem as you had in the past, When you're moving into the cloud, you get a lot more assets, a lot more identities, and everything of these devices, microsystems, microservices has an own identity. This might not be always be correlated or depending on a user and person to do something. It might also be a machine to machine, especially in clusters. It might be a machine to machine communication, which require, of course, also a certain level of rights that is used for this service to interact with other services, or at least, or in some point, to give out or give feedback to an user, an admin, to or the things they enter. So if you take this normally, well, an identity is normally generated all over your network, should be with an EIM system, so an identity access or EGAR system, which is opening up the accounts, is generating the identity, generating the user, the basic rights. It should normally, and if you do this right, also take care about service accounts. If not, well, this is some room for improvement, would definitely be on the list, on my list, for something going on. So, and if you already take these, would say, wide range of identities, and especially in the cloud, even more, you have to control the rights. And this is where privileged access management comes in play. This is where we start to help you. First of all, we identify all these identities that are there, maybe some that you don't know because they're in other directory services. In example, using Microsoft as the main and the AD as the main leading system for on-prem. You might use Azure AD for some special things in the cloud if you're going into Azure as an infrastructure service, but there might be also other things like Linux on-prem. There might be AWS, which is close to Linux. You might have some software as a service or platform as a service based on Google. Everything of these things bring an own set of identities. But if you go back to where you start, and if you think about who am I as the person, I will be the same person, independent if I use the on-prem environment, if I go into the cloud, if I use AWS, Azure, a software as a service, whatever. I'm the one who has a right to manage, to interact with some kind of these identities, and to interact with other identities. And depending on my right, and if this is not configured, I represent a risk. And I means also the printer in your office. It might be, I don't know, the microservice in your Kubernetes cluster. So it really depends. If you think on that as a risk, I'm a risk, and the risk is, or the higher my privileges are or my rights are, the bigger the risk becomes. So if I don't take this in terribly not correct form and don't look on my whole network in all, and even one of the users is impacted or infected, might be in the cloud, might be on-prem, totally independent. It might spread over the network. Especially with cloud, you have an external surface that is mostly separated from the normal way you use an EIM system or not normally do this consolidation part. So every identity that you have in the network, and I think this is the big change in thinking, must be secured, must be controlled about what kind of rights and what level of rights this system needs. So then, of course, the biggest thing is, how do I get knowledge about all of these things? Well, that's firstly coming out of your IAM system. You can connect the different directory service. You get a rough idea about what you have, and of course you need some scanners, or you can use some tools that we provide that help you to identify not only identities but also rights that are used in this system. So going further, also the old picture of privileged access management was, or the traditional PAM was, really based on, yes, I control my admins, I control the guys that are using the backups on the Linux servers, that are managing my Microsoft AD, that are managing my Microsoft servers. Now with the cloud, a lot of companies still try to do the same thing, just on a different environment, which to a certain point is, of course, a valid approach, especially if you only do lift and shift. So if you simply move old environments, or if you move former on-prem environments and solutions into the cloud, this might work to a certain point. But at the moment, when you have when you start using the cloud not only as a platform, as the server of someone else that you use, but as a real high scalability, high scaler with full functionality, a lot of microsystems, a lot of microservices interacting over different borders in the cloud, but also with on-prem, then you very really fast reach your border or the limit when you still stay on this classically admin kind of thinking, especially as there are other not cloud-born identities or assets that might have an impact on your cloud thing as well. So what we started, and this was beginning of Q2 of this year, we invented something. We tried to say, move away from this traditional PAM, think big, or think not big, broader, wider, and take care about everything that you have in a network, and include everything. It might not be the first step, but time over time, try to include everything into a privilege management as you see. So this is what we call extended PAM, and this includes totally, of course, the world of cloud. So to cover all of the things, and I will show you in a minute, we have solutions that are what Archie said, for the cloud, but also on the cloud. So it's totally depending on what you like to have, or what kind of approach you choose. So if you wrap your thinking around this, I control all rights everywhere, then it looks like, well, a heavy lift. It's quite complex. It looks very, how do I know anything? How can I approach this? This approach for the next 20 years. These are typically things that we hear a lot. But if you take this on a more pragmatic way, and this is what is also reflected in what Gartner called the PAM maturity model. And so this is a bit of copy of that we created for ourselves. It starts all with a journey into this PAM, privileged access management world, and it's independent of its on-prem, it's in the cloud, in which kind of cloud it is. So the basic thinking is always the same. The first starts with the first step. I know I'm a risk, and my company, my environment is completely under risk, so I need to do something, which is phase 0, the high risk phase. In the past, it was the danger zone. You can call it whatever you want. And if you look for the way to go into the cloud, normally you take a part. So you take a part of your environment that you think is most important. Might be your data center, the old, well, not the old, but the classic legacy data center into your basement. In combination, as you do some services in the cloud, and if you maybe also offer services for other customers in the cloud, you took all of these things and take out the first step of the risk. First step of the risk is simply you take the first step, take this part of the network, take this part of the environment, take out all identities that are, well, not used, not regulated enough. Take away all of these manual processes and this is where we start with PAM is mostly the password management, so the vault, but it's the first step. So, and fascinating enough, if you look on several reports every year, again, in Germany, the most used passwords are the same. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if you want to have it complex, you make a question mark on it. Or maybe you find, I think the last one was quite surprising, was I love you. So depends on how friendly your users are. If you have someone doing this manually, then it's always it's a risk, especially if you simply think about yourself. How many different kind of credentials do you have to manage, even in your private life? Think about it, but what this means for someone who is managing the Kubernetes cluster together with some part of the servers with the AD, the Azure AD together. So they have to know and remember a huge lot of paths, credentials, log on, and all these informations. And the easy one would be, it's number 1, it's number 2, it's number 3, and so on. So this is giving a quite broad surface for attackers. So the first thing, take these things and take it away. Independent where it is, so that any user who wants to, or any admin, or any identity who needs the rights for a certain service, for a certain approach, will no longer have an individual option to make this manually, but get everything automatically generated, automatically rotated, automatically with complexity, with using only one account. Might be your AD account, might be your Azure AD account, whatever. So the AWS account, also Google account. So it's up to you. How do you decide it? The next thing is get rid of overprivileged accounts. Also very important thing. So you find a lot of times, as Archie explained, the root account. Why do you need it? Yes, I'm the developer. Yeah, that's the point. But why do you need root accounts on this server? Why do you need root accounts of this kind of software on this service? Well, it was like it is. Sorry for the English. It was always that way. So we don't change this, and everyone is allowed to take this out. And of course, combine this with your identity and access management system, so that you get one word. And in the next steps, you can enhance these policies. You will go into a more an automation and intelligence part. So why, or where does we fit into this kind of play on this kind of strategic approach? Pretty simple. So on the first thing, the visibility, reduce attack surface. We have the classically PAM solutions and Vault. We have a connection manager. We offer remote access services, so that even someone coming from externally will only be allowed to contact or to use a service or something in the cloud, the same way as on-prem, without seeing anything besides, and only with the rights that you grant them. And the next part, and this is very, very heavy lifted for the cloud. This is what you see here as Cloud Suite, Server Suite, which is a bit of misleading the names, and which is where we still start to connect everything together. So the typical issue, and I will come that a minute again, is that you have a lot of different directory services that all carry own informations. Consolidate that, bring it all into one leading system. This is what these two products are designed for. And of course, granting or enabling users to have or customers to bring in one of the most important things, multi-factor authentication, but not only based on the single sign-on. I don't want to everyone is using now and some single sign-on functionality, multi-factor challenge for entering a laptop or maybe using Salesforce or whatever kind of software. But what we are talking is multi-factor authentication on servers, on cloud functionality, and depending on actions. So if someone needs more rights, if someone wants to do something which is not normal for him, which is out of band, maybe something that might be normal but need more attention, we have the ability to challenge completely flexible another MFA, which is simply doing only one thing, authenticating he is the one who is pretending to be. So I'm Andreas and I'm not somewhere else from outer space who is simply logged in and try to get the rights. Next thing, privilege manager is something that I would either have in the first step, but well, it's depending. It's the next combination. The cloud is as vulnerable as your clients. So if you go into with the same identity in the cloud that you use on your laptop, well, securing the laptop would be a good idea because this is the entry point for the most attacks. And DevOps Secrets Vault this is for real machine-to-machine communication. Means microsecond password rotation, fully integrated, very, very easy to implement for the DevOps. So for the team that is always using everything, and it's a help to get rid of all of these forgotten passphrases, forgotten password challenges that might be there. All right. So, and until to the point that you have automation, and if you remember, I did say something about the service accounts. We also have, based on a request from one of our customers, offer a solution that helps you to get control about all of these miraculously appearing and disappearing service accounts that will never ever disappear, but will only get old and will stay in your environment, and especially in something like a cloud environment with a lot of microservices, where you have a really, really fast time of turnaround of all the solutions and up and down scaling, then of course you will create such an kind of old stuff still residing in your network or in your environment. And account lifecycle management solution to help you in this generation of these accounts and getting rid of them at some point of time as well. So this is where we come and play, and this is where we say privileged access management, as Archie said, is no longer Vault. Vault is simply taking password, credentials, store them, rotate them, whatever, even if you use that. But we are now talking about the full picture of the full network. And one of the things that I mentioned before, which is something that we found as we have 3 challenges. I just want to talk about the second one for privileged access management, especially in this kind of environment where you have a lot of IT admins, you have non-human identities, developers, business users, which is in our context, someone who is simply consuming a solution, or remote workers. You have the typical problem with a cloud environment is you have separated, and also on-prem, you have separated environments, directory services. So if you want to be an admin, you might use the Microsoft Active Directory. In parallel, you might need a different account for the Azure AD in the way when you move from on-prem into cloud, or if the real move is a bit of would be a bit of miraculous, but so because a lot of things stay on-prem simply because they're not movable into the cloud, but for the time that you move in between, or you have a coexistence of both things. The sync it's provided by Microsoft, but it's not an easy one. It's always a bit of tricky. This is something where you still in between the world of Microsoft still struggle. Just imagine that you add AWS with an own directory services, or maybe Google, or Alibaba Cloud, or then other things like Red Hat and Linux in your on-prem environment. So you have a lot of number of different accounts. Again, remember, I'm the admin. I want to work with 2 or 3 of these environments. I have to remember only of that at least 3 accounts, logins, credentials. So what we can help you, and this is typically first approach, and a lot of things that we see a lot in the cloud, is we can provide a solution or an help with the consolidation of all of these accounts for the different environments, so that you simply use, well, if you decide to go with Azure AD as the leading system, or whatever, Microsoft Active Directory, we can give you we do what we call the identity brokering for all of these things. So I want to log in, I want to log into a Linux or an AWS. I use the same credentials, the same logon as I use on my Microsoft AD or in the Azure AD. So this is one of the benefits, give you a lot of more control about what's happening in the network. So you don't have these fragmented, double shared account structure with a lot of things. So you can really go down into the world of zero trust, also based on all of your environment. You get control about this. You have a consistent reporting on that. And of course, you can combine it again with, I want to log into an AWS, I want to log in and I want to need more rights. You might request just-in-time privileges, and we challenge you. So are you really the one who wants to, who should get the rights? So it's all in one system, helps a lot in organization, helps a lot in combination, together with a very strong Vault working on-prem, or either in the cloud-born, but we can also, would say, a bit more classically conservative companies, we can do a combination. So we can combine a cloud-borne management with an on-prem vault, so that all of your credentials will still stay here. So in total, I hope I could give you a first impression about what kind of flexible solutions or options you might get with a solution of us, and especially if you think broader, not PAM is for the admins, and maybe the secret vault is for, or the DevOps vault is for the DevOps. It's more about think globally, think holistic, and well, we cover your back on that way. So that's from my side. I hope I was able to give you some impression, and then I would stop my sharing. I think we already.
Thank you, Andreas. So, and thanks, Archie. So I would say that we use the rest of the time now for you to ask questions to both. So you can just type in your question in the chat, and then we can pick them up. So the first question to you is if you can say something about financial costs.
Always too expensive. No, it really depends. So if you go for a full-blown PAM, it can become, well, a bit of a heavy lift from the start. It really depends on your size. So if you go for, let me think about, just starting with multi-factor authentication on your servers is a single module, does not require anything else. Well, to be honest, I cannot say. This is a software as a service solution. Sorry, it's quite off. So an admin is roundabout in the software as a service, roundabout 300 to 400 euros a year. So we cannot say it. It depends on use case, because there are so many different availabilities. I can only say that in comparison with other vendors and with our competitors, we normally don't lose because of the pricing without heavy lifts from our side.
So let me say a little bit about that to help you out, Andreas.
Yeah.
I think in the long run, this is an investment, and you're going to increase your efficiency, especially if you get into automation. If you have a really good technical staff or good consultancy that can help you automate a lot of the processes using the tool, it can help reduce those costs and the technical skill set required by your admins.
Just yes, thanks helping me out of this, Archie. I have two customers in mind, and you're right. So normally a lot of these projects are driven by security concerns, audit and stuff like that. Just out of mind, I have two customers coming. One is government part, and the other one is in the utilities area. They simply use our solution because it makes the life easier, because they have the chance to not run after, I don't know, 20 volts, 15 different access solutions. So they simply use one solution. It makes them life much easier. They saved a lot of time, and at least from what the one of them told us, it's a 5,000 employee entity. They saved the work time, and not the guys, of course, the work time for two admins that are formerly were only focusing on generating and managing rights.
Yeah, the technical skill set is, as we move things to the cloud, is increased, and so there's less and less people to manage the more and more we're doing on the cloud, and even within the enterprise. And so automating is key, and to be able to automate, you need a good solid foundation with products like Secret Server or other products that allow you to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, who developed the framework for identity-centric security?
IDSA, Identity Defined Access. It's a consortium of several companies, 30 companies right now, that are working together to create that. It's originally Ping Identity was one of the founders of it. It's not getting a lot of traction in my mind, but I think it's well thought out. Okay, so and that is just one framework out there. I like NIST. I've used NIST a lot for various tools to help get started in implementing technology within the organization. I've done lots of government work, and so NIST is kind of like a big help to me to guide my work. So I look to them more than I do the IDSA. I just discovered them recently, but they're definitely trying to become a think tank for what we do.
Okay, thank you. There's another question. What about PAM in an OT environment where secure access on machines for remote maintenance, etc., needs to be granted? Any recommendations or critical aspects?
Well, I can give it a take. You can take it from the vendor side point of view. So normally, yes, if you have an OT environment, if you take an classically would say legacy environment, in OT you find a mix of a lot of different kind of OS old stuff running, but a lot of new things. What you should consider in OT, especially with remote access services, is in the end it's the same as you have it for your IT environment. First thing would be take away all the rights to change something, because no one who is pushing the button to produce a part might need also the rights to shut down the database. This is one of the first things. The second thing would be if you need rights for external suppliers or service guys to connect to your system, don't let them in the network. Simply control what they're doing. So in optimum, this is what we do or provide with one of our solutions is we show a portal, and this portal is not connected into the network. It's simply a cloud-based portal. You can log on, you can request rights. You only see the devices that you need to connect to, and then the privileged access service, the privileged access management solution in the background will guide you through, will grant the rights that you need at that moment of time, and then you have a limited time or whatever, how we define it, maybe a 4 eyes principle as the second factor, so that you really avoid someone breaking out of this environment, only doing what they need to do, not infecting your efficiency and the production environment itself, but also have the option to see what the guy is doing. So this is what we normally found a lot of times as the reasonable or the most profitable approach. Archie, any comments? You have a lot more environments.
No comments. That was good.
All right. What happens if the cloud goes down?
Depends. If you are, if you like, I think there is one thing, South Park, then you might look into this episode where the cloud is down. But I think Archie can say something better on that one.
So yeah, as far as Delinea, they've got good disaster recovery feature. So in the case of an emergency or a network outage, you can make use of it. You can configure the secret server instance to be transferred over to another secret server instance, and so you can have something on-prem if you want. So select folders and secrets. You don't have to replicate everything, right? And so you can have some critical components stored locally, or you can, if your whole infrastructure is not that big, you can definitely replicate everything locally. So this is new for Delinea, and it's I don't know, maybe Andreas, you can talk a little bit more about that and the future of it, roadmap for that feature.
Yeah, so this is what we released, I think, 2 months ago. In the end, it does not say, it simply says that you can have a second environment, which is your break the glass disaster recovery environment, where we copy certain part of it. We will increase this so that the copy process and the backup process getting faster, so that you can back up more or less anything. So the big interesting thing, and I think one of the most important things, if you look into this cloud-born solution stuff, and if this environment is down, you can copy whatever you do in the cloud in a separate cloud, or you can copy this and back it up with your on-prem environment, so that at least your on-prem environment is able to do. And if only this software as a service solution would be down by either way, because we give higher SLAs than whatever our hyperscaler doing, then it simply jumps down. You can use all of the credentials. You simply can work like you do, but then of course the authentication will be done out of on-prem. This is one of the scenarios. There are different others. So in total, well, if the cloud is really down, we all have another problem. But I think the question was more focused on what happens if the Delinea cloud is down, because otherwise we will have no point. But yes, then you can back it up in on-prem, and this is automatically an automatic process. You might lose whatever 10 minutes or 50 minutes depending on your settings, but it's something coming up, especially with the roadmap. Yes, I can give us a short spoiler. Two. One of them is simply that we will add more backup features or backup data that we can do on the one side. This is coming up until beginning of next year, and around about beginning of next year, which is not that far away now, we will allow customers to implement different kind of vaults into our platform, so that you can say, I want to have and maybe replicate between you can have in the same console or in the same management and on-prem or whatever, 2 on-prem vaults for Germany and Switzerland, because you need to do this, but you can also have one for your subsidiary in Americas and in cloud. So this combination is the thing where the flexibility comes up, where you only need one thing when you can back up depending on your needs.
Great. So yeah, if you have any additional questions, just send them over to me or to my 2 colleagues. And yeah, I want to thank you all for your time, for your interest. Also, thank you to Andreas and Archie for your presentation. It was really great. And then, yeah, I wish you all a great rest of the day. Until next time. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.